So I threatened to put up a video yesterday, and the exact context was talking about experiences at Sci-Fi on the Rock, which is the first, well, it's the 8th year they've been doing it, but it's the first time I've gone to one. Not just to attend one and like to buy my way into the venue and stuff, like, which is awesome. I don't mind doing that. I support the cause and I support the like the idea of it. I think it's a really good thing that we do have a convention here at all. What did I do when I went there? I looked at the schedule of events that was going to be happening, but particularly the panel speakers, or the panels of speakers. And the first one that I attended was on instances of fiction wherein the science of it, or particularly the medical science of it, had been fooled up. So as the lecture progressed, though, it was really well attended. It was 2 doctors. One was an endocrinologist. The other one deals in palliative care, among other things. And I found the topic matter incredibly interesting. It was so well attended, the place was standing room only. And once they got through the lecture, the 2 of them, they didn't even really open the floor to questions. People just started asking questions, and it was very free form, which I found to be quite encouraging. But there came a point where I wanted to ask a question, and I realized I'm going to have to pretty much assert myself, or the question I won't get a chance. So I waited until the right moment to ask the question that I wanted to ask. But before that moment occurred, there came a point in time where someone else raised their hand and asked, "Well, what about an incendiary bullet? What about a bullet which basically catches you on fire if you get shot with it? What would happen in that case, And the panel speakers hummed and hawed with one another over, whether or not they would be able to, in fact, the first answer that was given was, well, I don't have any incendiary bullets, so I have no idea what would happen if you got shot with one. I'm standing in the back of the room. My hand goes up immediately. They're like, yes. And I go, well, in tracer bullets are incendiary. They use phosphorus, and we've been using them since at least the Second World War. In fact, we've been using them since the First World War. They were in use in First World War airplanes. And as a result of this knowledge, I can be fairly confident that, yes, we must have some medical research into what would happen if you got shot by an incendiary bullet, which I thought was kind of funny because they didn't realize that some of this technology, this science fiction-y stuff like you see in Borderlands, the video games, or whatever else, they do exist and have existed for some time, some of them. Panel discussions are very, very cool, and I'm looking forward to the next convention for the same reason, if only to have the opportunity to ask some of the, maybe not the tough questions, but the true-to-life questions. And also, before I go any further, or before I finish, the real issue with that first panel discussion was encouraging people, I guess, who are engaged in the writing side of it, because they asked, are there any writers here? Again, out goes my hand. Even if I don't write a whole heck of a lot, I do write. Are there any writers here? Why? Because there's 2 different kinds of science fiction, at least. I mean, there's more than 2 different kinds, but there's a broad distinction that could be drawn between a type of science fiction which is not dependent on the theory, the science theory, but more so on what's true about human relationships, or human beings themselves, or what follows after human beings, or entities, or people. That's sometimes called a soft science fiction. And then on the other end of the spectrum is the very hard science fiction. What could I point at to draw the distinction in terms of fictional material which is fairly common? Well, the soft science fiction would be things like Star Wars, whereas hard science fiction would be more like 2001: Space Odyssey, according to Kubrick. And I think that's a very, very timely and important instance of like a topic for a panel discussion, because of the role of science in the fiction. I had another friend that I met there yesterday, at the end of a third panel discussion, which was related to the first one, but only because it was still talking about the same topic, science fiction. The reason why I mentioned this is I asked him after the lecture was over, after the panel discussion was done, where does science fiction get its authority? At the end of the day, and he went, well, I'm like, well, answer the question. Where does science fiction get its authority? And it's fairly straightforward. It's right there in the name. The human condition really responds to authority, doesn't it? Or it likes having some kind of authority that it can refer to, point at, and say, hey, this is why. Or this is how and why. And science in the last, say, 100, 150 years has been gradually coming to grips with the fact that we can't always say how and why. We can say how, we might be able to say a bit of the why, but we don't often find ourselves in a position of being able to say both how and why with specific theories. The authority is the science, and science itself is a manner of gathering knowledge or associating or organizing knowledge, but it's dependent entirely upon a method, and the method is what informs us that theory is frequently more useful than fact. Peace.